Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening for our Key Stage 4 options evening. As with all these things at the moment, we would prefer to have you in school and be able to talk to you face to face and in person to answer any queries that you have. Unfortunately, that we're just not able to do that at the moment safely. So I've put together this short presentation to give you hopefully as much information as you need to allow you and your child to fill in and complete the options form and send it back to us in preparation for September for studying the option subjects that your child wants to take at GCSE. For those of you who I haven't met before, my name is Mr. Yassin. I'm Deputy Head Teacher and I'm responsible for curriculum and teaching, learning and quality of education within the school. This evening my plan is to outline briefly the options process and how our curriculum is structured, to talk you through how the options form works and how the process works and what support's in place for you, and then to give you some idea of the timeline for returning your options form to ensure that your child's form is considered with all the other students' forms as well. So to begin with, I'd like to just point out a few key differences for anyone who's had children who've gone through the school previously or remembers their own, is young enough to remember their own GCSE options choices. So many people have been used to the GCSE A to G style scale, and that's no longer the case. GCSE is now awarded as a grade 9 as the top grade, down to a grade 1, and this changed a few years ago. All of our GCSE subjects are now a scale of grade 9 to 1. There's no more controlled assessment or coursework if you remember coursework, but there are still a number of internal assessments within some subject areas. So DT and art, for example, will have portfolio or non-examined assessment based work, which is done over a period of time and marked internally and then moderated externally. There's very little tiering within exam papers now, so gone are the days where there are foundation and higher tier papers for most subjects. Now we only see that in maths, science and modern foreign languages, so that's French, German and Spanish at this school. So some of our subjects are part of our core offering. In this school, that's English language and English literature, and all students, or the vast majority of students, will take both English language and literature at GCSE. Our maths GCSE is part of our core offering, and so is science at GCSE level. Many of our students will opt to do triple science or separate sciences in the options, and we'll talk more about that later. But lots of ours will also do combined sciences, and that's worth 2 GCSEs. All students will have to do at least combined science. Students here also study personal development, PE, and religious studies. They don't lead to qualifications at the end of the course, but they are still an integral part of our core offering and a mandatory part of our offering as well. I wanted on this slide to briefly outline to you the importance of GCSEs and the equivalents, and we offer some that are not GCSEs but are BTECs and those sorts of things, or Cambridge National qualifications. But the importance of all those qualifications in terms of next steps and progression, whether that's here at our excellent sixth form centre or whether that's further afield or in other employment and training opportunities. So the first thing I would say is the qualifications that we have selected to offer young people at Taverham High School are designed with next steps in mind. So they're suitable for most of our learners who will access A-levels or equivalent qualifications or go to sixth form colleges, but also they are valued in the workplace for those pursuing vocational education, but also for those going to university in the future and considering those routes into higher education. And one of the things I'll talk about in this presentation is the importance of breadth in that offering, and our qualifications lead to that breadth and give people leave doors open for young people when they leave us, either post 16 or post 18. As I've said, that range of qualifications that we offer and the way our core and our options are structured give a real diversity to people's portfolio of qualifications, which gives greater possible career pathways in the future. And again, I'll talk later on about how most young people don't yet know what they want to do when they leave school or as a future career, and most people will have many careers in their lifetime. So it's really important that at this young stage that people's options and future choices are not closed down by a narrow selection of GCSE options. In terms of why with us at Taverham High School, well, it's important to study in an environment you're comfortable in, and our young people in Year 9 have made a great start to high school, and therefore Taverham High School is a place that offers them comfort and offers them an environment that they're used to learning in. But also, just as important is that they're taught by teachers, who know those students and know how to get the very best out of them, have already started building those really important relationships with young people. And they're the things that we feel are really important in terms of young people succeeding in their qualifications. You'll also see that we've got a really wide offering of qualifications within the option blocks, or within the option choices, I should say. We think that's really important. It's not inexpensive. Of course, it costs money to have a really wide offering, but we think that's really important to be able to give young people the choice of qualifications they want to pursue. And that's why we offer things like business studies and creative media and media studies and those sorts of things that you won't see at all schools. But we think it's really important because for some people, that's their passion and a future career pathway. And you will see details on the website and on our YouTube channel of those subjects that are available. So the next part of this presentation is a guide on how to make your choices and how to complete the forms as well. I'll flag up later on that the form that I originally asked you to complete within the pack that went home in December has now had to change to an online form for obvious reasons. But it's important that we now go through the stages of that process. So I want to talk first of all about what information is available to you. In December by email, you received an options pack, an options booklet, which looked a bit like this on the front cover. Within that is lots and lots of the information you need around our GCSEs, what GCSEs are, what the English Baccalaureate or EBAC is, what subjects we offer and why, the content of those. And then there's a timeline in that packet and a form as well. If you haven't got that booklet or are unable to access it through the email, it's available on our school website, which within the curriculum area. So please do download it from there and have a look through it. We have a great YouTube channel as well, Tapeworm High School, and within that there will be a channel, a playlist for just option subjects as well, so you can find out a bit more about those subjects with some small kind of 2-minute videos from our colleagues who were describing what those courses are like for you. And then the last thing I'd offer here is when you go through filling in the options form, one of the final questions is, would you like a meeting with a member of staff to discuss the options? Now, we don't think it's necessary to meet every single student. For the vast majority of our students, they won't need any input from teachers or from the school leadership team to help direct those choices. Many of our students will already know what option subjects they wish to pursue. But if that is something you think would be valuable to you, please tick the box on the feedback form on the online options form, and we'll get in touch and make an appointment for you and your family to meet over Teams or Zoom, so we can have that conversation and help direct you in that decision. So the key points around the options process then. There are 3 pathways to choose from. Now, if your target is a grade 5 or above in English, then you should be opting for pathway A. On pathway A, as you'll see from the diagram here, but also from the options booklet, you have to choose from one subject from block 1, at least one subject, and that's French, Spanish or German. You have to choose at least one subject from option block 2, and that's geography or history. And then you must choose at least one, most likely 2 options from block 3, and that's all the other subjects we offer. If your target in English is grade 4 or below, then you are entitled to choose pathway A. But if you would prefer to choose pathway B or C, then that's appropriate as well. So if you're on pathway B, then you will choose at least one subject from block 1, which is geography, history, computer science, separate sciences, French, German and Spanish. If you are you will then also choose the rest of your subjects from block 2. You are of course entitled to choose more than one subject from block 1, but you must choose at least one. If you think that you are a student who would benefit from taking fewer level 2 qualifications, and level 2 is generally a pass and above, so a grade 4 or 5 and above. If you feel that it would be beneficial for you to concentrate more on your core studies, then you may choose pathway C. However, it's most likely this would be done in conversation with our Senko, Miss Dixon, or a member of the leadership team, and we will make contact if we think that's appropriate. If you're not sure if that applies to you or not, please contact the school, contact myself, Miss Ricketts or Miss Dixon, or your head of year. On this slide, I wanted to just talk you through some of the really key points around how to make your option choices. So it's most important that students understand they have to choose 4 options, and they have to study 4 options in the autumn term of year 10. For a very small number of students, that won't be necessary, and they'll be contacted by the SND department and probably on pathway C. But for most students, there'll be 4 options that you have to study. It's really important that students don't base their option choices on those option choices made by their friends. So, for example, in the current year 11 cohort, we have a history group in each of the 4 option blocks. Now, that means that if you choose history because your friend's choosing history, you will not be guaranteed to be in the same class as them anyway. So that's definitely not a reason to choose a certain option subject. All of our option subjects are taught in mixed attainment groups. That's solely because of the way that we do the options process, and because students can choose which subjects they want to do, it forces mixed attainment groups, and we're really happy with that. Irrespective of which groups you find yourself in, we always aim for the very highest for all of our students. And obviously your target grades may differ from one another, but that's absolutely fine. And our staff are really well trained and well used to dealing with that situation. It's important when considering engineering and computer science that you understand that there's a really heavy maths content in those subjects. My advice to you would be, if you're somebody who enjoys maths and is good at maths, absolutely they're fine subjects for you to consider. If you're unsure, your best bet is to contact Mr. Wilson or Mr. Eastick to discuss those subjects and just get a better understanding of what the maths content looks like. From September, when you're in your new classes, you'll have 10 school days, that's 2 weeks, where you can change your course from one to another if you think you've made the wrong choice. It's really important you understand that that's a specific period of time, and after that point you will not be allowed to change your courses. Now, the reason for that is the amount of lost learning in those 10 hours from the other subject you're changing to would just be too much to catch up with after that point. As always, we may not be able to offer all the subjects that we are offering at the moment, and that would be due to staffing or change of exam boards and things like that. If that's the case, we will of course contact families where those option choices have been selected. We'll talk through the filling in the form in a minute, but it's really important that students make 4 first choice selections and 3 reserve choices. Now, the reserves come into play if we have to cancel a course, if we can't staff a course, if the course gets withdrawn at an exam board level, or if the course is oversubscribed and we have to then look at reserve choices. It's very rare for students to have reserve choices or to use reserve choices, but it's important that you've made those selections so we know what you might consider if your first 4 choices or any of them become unavailable. Okay, so what do you need to submit? The booklet that came home to you in December would have had this form in the back of it. Had we been in a position to see people face to face, this would be the form that I'd be asking back from you. As things are with lockdown learning, we're not going to need that form back from you. Instead, there's an online form which is available. You can see the link at the top there. I will email that out to everybody tomorrow. So on the 5th of February, all families will receive that link. So what does the form look like? What do you need to submit? Well, when you click that link, you'll go into a Microsoft Forms page, which looks like this. Now you can see where I put the red arrow there to indicate there's a reader option. So if you're somebody who struggles to read long forms, absolutely fine. If you click the immersive reader button, the form will be read out to you. It's a very simple series of tick boxes. The first of all is just to write your name in. Then after that, it moves on to look at your form group, which pathway you're applying for, A, B, or C. And then it asks you to choose 4 priority subjects, those that you wish to study the most. Now, a reminder, if you're on pathway 1, you must select a language and a humanities subject, and all students must select at least one from French, German, Spanish, separate sciences, geography, history, or computer science. And you can see the list of subjects there. After that, the question 5 looks at your 3 reserve subjects. And again, these are the choices that you would study if your first choices were unavailable for any reason. And then the 6th question is, would you like a meeting with a member of staff to discuss your options? Now, if that's something you think would be really important to you and that you would benefit from having a meeting with a member of staff, if you click yes and submit your form as early as possible, then we will make contact with you and we will meet with you and your family to discuss those options. If you click no, that's absolutely fine, and the vast majority of our students will not need a meeting with a member of staff. Lots of our students will already know what they want to do and have a good idea about which subjects they want to take. In box number 7, you can add any information that you wish to, that you think is relevant to the options process. So some important points for you. It's important to acknowledge that English and maths remain essential. You must pass your English and maths, preferably at grade 5 or above, but certainly at grade 4 or above, and that's to access further employment training and employment opportunities. And that's why it makes up a large lump of our core offering. Some post-16 or post-18 providers may only accept candidates with a 5 or better in modern foreign language. Now, this has been a worry or a threat, so to speak, for a number of years now, and we haven't seen this becoming a real problem for lots and lots of our students. But it would be remiss of me not to indicate that this is a possibility going forward, that some post-16 or post-18 providers may demand a grade 5 or better in a modern foreign language, and you can see how that's reflected within our curriculum offering. It's really important to keep your curriculum as broad as possible, particularly if you don't know what you want to do as a future career. But it's also important to acknowledge that most young people will have several different careers in their life. So that breadth of learning, that breadth of understanding you'll gain from a broad curriculum is really, really important going forward. It's also important to note, though, that students are most successful in subjects they enjoy. People will put more energy into things that they enjoy doing, and let that also help you guide your GCSE options choices. At this stage, none of our courses have a school-specific entry requirement. However, you need to think about your progress through Key Stage 3 in certain subjects and whether that has allowed you to get to the point where you feel confident in pursuing that at GCSE level. If you are unsure, your best bet is to contact your teacher and have a conversation with them about whether they think you would be able to meet the demands of the courses. And then my final point on this slide is really about, as I mentioned earlier, your friends, your siblings, your parents. It doesn't matter what any of those have done in their life in terms of their options or what they are choosing for their options. The most important thing for you is your future, and base your choices around what you enjoy doing and what you might want to do in the future. It doesn't matter which teachers you like and whether they are teachers that may be teaching you, because the truth of it is they may not be teaching you next year. So it's really important that you base your choices on what you may want to do when you're older and what you think you will enjoy. So I asked in my email in December and again in January for parents to send in queries that they have around the options process that I could address during this presentation. Thank you to those who did. The first one that came up was around why students with a grade 5 or above target in English have to take a language as one of the GCSE choices, and how this seemingly reduces the choice compared to those who don't have grade 5 target. I think that I can only really reiterate things that I've said before, which is that most students don't know what their future career pathways may look like, and indeed where they may be. The government research and research from charities, educational institutions suggests that the breadth of curriculum forced by EBAC subjects, so those being languages, sciences and humanities subjects, make young people more employable and are essential for degrees and future employment opportunities. But it also increases the chance that students are going to stay on in full-time education, and also complements English and maths learning. So as a school, although the government has aimed for 75% of students to study the EBAC combination of subjects by 2022, we are comfortable that we are unlikely to meet that demand. And the 90% by 2025, again, we are comfortable that we're likely to be below that figure, because we don't believe in forcing students to do subjects where they are not likely to pass. However, where students are likely to pass a language subject or a humanities subject, we think it's really important that they study those subjects at GCSE. Another query from a parent was, does my child need to keep up home learning at this stage in subjects they don't intend to study at GCSE? The simple answer for that is yes. My colleagues have spent a lot of time planning the latter half year 9 courses to make sure that learning is valid and not just for pre-GCSE learning, but also to make a cross-curricular links with other subject areas as well. But it's also a requirement that students continue to study all those subjects till the end of Key Stage 3. I would also suggest that students are aware that their option choice is not guaranteed, and therefore it's possible that you could end up not working in a subject now and then taking that subject to GCSE in September, and you won't know that until the summer term. I was asked to clarify the advantages and disadvantages between separate science or combined science. Really, it depends on the level of interest. There will be lots of people post-16 who study A-levels in chemistry, biology and physics who won't have studied separate sciences at GCSE. The separate sciences course at GCSE leads to 3 different GCSEs, chemistry, biology and physics, whereas combined science is a 2 GCSE equivalent award, and they are combined. Again, you'll study chemistry, biology and physics, but they'll be examined together rather than separately. If students are adamant that they will be taking A-levels in chemistry, biology or physics, then I would always recommend the separate sciences because it gives them a greater depth of understanding going into those courses. And obviously the vast majority of students studying post-16 chemistry, biology and physics will have taken the separate sciences at GCSE, but certainly people are able to access those courses with combined science. We often have queries around things like medicine and veterinary science and whether that's important in terms of whether you take combined or separate sciences. And again, the truth is there is no clear pathway there. So there will be people every year who will access medicine at degree level, having taken combined sciences. So it's really about what your level of interest is, but it does support post-16 routes as well. Thank you to whoever asked around subject specifics at A-level, so things like psychology and subjects that are new, like sociology, and whether there is a specific GCSE requirement to access those. The simple answer is no. For new subjects like sociology and psychology, we don't have, and politics, we don't have entry requirements in that way. Some subjects, art, maths, have entry-level requirements. So maths, for example, you'd need a grade 6 at GCSE. Art, you would need to either have studied GCSE art and got a grade 6 in that, or have a portfolio of evidence suggesting that you can work at that level. But other subjects, there isn't an entry requirement for those subjects. If you're unsure about which subjects would best suit that progression route, though, your best bet is to discuss that with one of our teachers in those specific subject areas, so Miss Redding for psychology, for example, and ask if she could guide you as to which subjects would best support that route. There was a question about how parents and families can find out more about the subjects that are new to GCSE, so business studies, child development, media studies, things like that. I've asked staff to produce short videos for our YouTube channel, and they will be available from the 5th of February, so Friday. But also there's information in the options booklet to support that as well. And again, if you are unsure and haven't got the information you need, please make contact with the school, please contact those teachers, and they will be able to guide you more as well. I think I've addressed already why reserved choices are necessary. It's very rare for us to use those, but it's important that we have that information just in case we end up with an absent teacher or we end up with unable to run a course, so we can look at those next choice options. A really important query came in around SEND requirements and students who have special educational needs and how they're supported through the process. After this presentation today, so tomorrow onwards, members of the learning support team will be in touch with families to make meetings and to set those meetings up. We think it's really important those young people are supported well through this process, so our team will be proactive in engaging you with those meetings rather than you having to request those. If, of course, that doesn't happen, please get in touch with me and we'll set up those meetings. And then we also had a question about whether my child can study any of the 3 languages offered, and I'm afraid the answer there is no. They can only really study the language that they've been studying at Key Stage 3. So if your child has been studying German through Key Stage 3, they can only study German at GCSE. They can't study French and Spanish. So what next? Well, many of you will have attended our virtual parents' evening a few weeks ago. Thank you for those that managed to get to that. Hopefully that gave you an opportunity to discuss with teachers how well your child is doing in those subjects and whether their courses will be appropriate for them. Tonight, 3rd of February, is our Key Stage 4 options evening, and again, hopefully this has been a useful presentation to give you some information about courses and where you can get further information about the options process in general. Next Friday, so Friday the 11th of February, will be the deadline for submitting forms online, and I'll send the link out one more time from tomorrow, so all families have that. And over the next week or so will be those interviews with people who have, or meetings with people who have requested that they'd like to meet the member of staff to discuss options or the options process. In the period after that, we'll be putting groups together, and I'll be having conversations with people if there's anybody that I need to speak to about
first and second option choices and those sorts of things. And then the outcomes of the process will be released to families around May half term in 2022, ready for a September start. Thank you again to all who've accessed this presentation this evening. I hope it's been a useful presentation for people. If you have any questions, just to reiterate that you can contact myself at the school or any of the leadership team, or you can contact your head of year, Miss Gardner, or the SEND team if that's appropriate. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great half term when it comes.